Well, in a harrowing interview to Israel's Channel 12 News, Hamas captivity survivor guy Gilboa Dalal details the sexual abuse he endured inside Gaza. In one instance, his captor tied him to a chair, blindfolded him, and made explicit sexual threats while kissing his neck and back. 1 month after his release, Guy is bravely sharing his story. Here's just part of that interview.
וכשאני מסיים את המקלחת, הוא גורר אותי משם המקלחת, הוא לא נותן לי ללבוש את הבגדים שלי, לוקח אותי חזרה לחדר שלהם, ואז הוא זורק אותי על אחת הכורסאות שלהם, הוא התחיל לגעת לי בכל הגוף, ואני קפאתי, אמרתי לו, אתה צוחק, נכון? זה אסור באסלאם, הוא הצמיד לי רובה לראש וסכין לגרון, אמר לי שאם אני אספר את זה למישהו, אז הוא יהרוג אותי.
Incredibly difficult, but very important testimony to hear. And to discuss more, we're joined now by Professor Ruth Halperin-Kaddari, head of the Rockman Center for the Advancement of Women at Bar Ilan University, as well as a founding member of the Dina Project, which is comprised of a group of female experts in law, gender, and civil society. And it documents and analyzes conflict-related sexual violence, which is used as a weapon of war. Something, unfortunately, Professor Halperin-Kaddari, we have seen countless times on and since October 7th. And you have documented these patterns of sexual violence from that dark Saturday and since, and previously from released female hostages. But now, some of the most recently released men are describing similar abuse. What stands out to you in their accounts?
Well, you're absolutely right. What we now see is that the pattern of sexual abuse that we documented coming from October 7 has continued in captivity, and not only versus female hostages, but also against male hostages. And what is very apparent is that it includes many types of abuse that we might not under first blush classify as sexual harassment, but when they come in situations of total powerlessness and dehumanization of the captives, and they are targeted against aiming at erasing the sexuality of the captive, of the hostage, like, for example, Keith Siegel, who had been released already before, had told also very, very bravely and courageously about undergoing complete shaving of body hair, which is a type of erasing the sexuality. Using sexual violence as a weapon of war is exactly that. It is targeted against the procreation, against the procreative capacity of the people, of the enemy. And every individual which belongs to that group of the enemy becomes a vessel to advance this message of total dehumanization and destruction of the future of the enemy. And so that is why male hostages and their bodies are just like female hostages. There are, of course, differences. Male hostages cannot become pregnant. There are differences in the types of violence. Female hostages were subjected very often to threats of forced marriages, which, of course, forced marriage is, in fact, rape. Male hostages were not threatened by that. But I should also indicate that a guy who is really to be so admired for his bravery and for understanding that it is so important that people will hear what he went through, he actually was subjected to an attempted rape. And males can also be raped, not just females.
No, these testimonies, it is so important to share, as you mentioned, so that the world sees this. But many of these survivors say that the trauma, it's only made worse by stigma from sharing their stories, from silence, or even from disbelief. This didn't really happen to you. What support systems are in place specifically for some of these male victims? How is it different for what they might need from some of the female victims?
I think that the Israeli authorities, which at the beginning of the war, were, we should admit, totally unprepared for this type of terror and for this type of violence as part of a terror attack, have now actually come to their grips and are offering very close accompanying of all these hostages, all these returned hostages, and offer the types of help, of emotional help that they really need. You are also very accurate in pointing to the fear of being disbelieved, which we, and now I talk in the plural sense because I think that it is we as a society that had been facing this denialism, this minimalization, and then denialism and disbelief of our cries about what had actually took place on October 7 in captivity. And this denial, this concerted efforts of denialism that are spreading through social media and that are being propaganded by Hamas and all its allies, they really serve as a very strong system of another system of humiliation and destruction and also dehumanization.
It all ties into it, and that is why it is so important to give these survivors who are willing to speak out the platform to share their stories. Professor Ruth Halperin-Kaddari, thank you so much for being with us on I-24 News today.
Thank you for having me.